already.
That's your Twitter handle.
I don't have a Twitter handle. I don't have Twitter.
You're not on Twitter.
No, I'm really old school. Okay.
Bawal.
So I'm Kenjie, I'm 24, and before I start talking, I just want to know, can everybody hear me from here, yeah? Okay, how many of you guys are Filipinos that have lived abroad for over a year? Raise your hands.
For a year now.
6 months, raise your hands. How many of you guys are expats? I think like, oh, Filipinos have some weird habits sometimes I just don't seem to understand. Of course you guys would do that.
White boy. White boy. White girl.
Fair enough. And so, but the whole thing about how I started, the whole reason why I'm talking is because I did it with the organizer. I was just talking about my experiences living abroad. He said, Kenji, you should talk about that. So I'm not any of these really experienced, cool guys with cool jobs. I just finished school 3 months ago. And I just came back to the Philippines. But I do have a lot of anecdotal evidence, I mean, kind of anecdotes, as to how people act in the Philippines and how I think people are conditioned in the Philippines socially. And so I'm not a specialist, and when I say always, I mean most of the time. When I say everyone, I mean most people. When I say here, I mean probably anywhere in Asia, really. And so I know that I'm speaking through a very subjective lens, but I think that if you listen, you might get something from it. I'm speaking also from the lens of a very privileged kid. I just finished school and I studied abroad, and I'm speaking through a lens of a very privileged kid. I understand that we're all here and we're all like in the peninsula in Salon Dining, and like pretty much everyone here must be privileged as well. So I hope you guys can relate to what I'm saying just a bit. And like I said, I just finished school and I've been abroad for 6 years. So I'm going to talk about how I think the class divide in the Philippines, the divide between the rich and the poor, affects how people are in the Philippines, pretty much. So the first time I was in Europe, I was 16 and I loved it. I'm like, oh damn, it's so cool, I can do anything I want, you know, I love the people. And if you ask me like, what did I like about Europe, the people, like I couldn't really answer you. And right now I'm still struggling to answer why. And I traveled a bit, I've been to Germany and Sweden and all that, and I figured out that they're in countries where there's where they're egalitarian, in countries without that big social gap, they act kind of different from we do. Because every time I'd come home, I'd go into some kind of culture shock. I didn't know why. And so through traveling, I saw how you know the economy kind of affected our people in really, I'd say, significant ways. And so I'm going to bring with you guys a bunch of anecdotes, which is in my experience are totally successful. And like you could be like, Kenji, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but just listen. You might get something from it, right? And so there are a bunch of lines I heard my friends say, or people say, that they sound completely normal over there, but when they're said over here, they're like, what the hell, are you kidding me? Like that just sounds really weird. And so the first is, my friend is a mechanic, he makes a lot of money. So I heard that in Paris from one of my friends, and if you really hear that here, my friend is a mechanic, he makes a lot of money. I mean, presumably, I'm speaking from the lens of a privileged kid, presumably we're all from the upper class, right? And if one of our friends or something is a mechanic, like the first thing we would say was like, oh, he doesn't make a lot of money, right? And that's just like, first I'm like, wait, that's a bit weird, okay, so let's think about it more. And the second is we did a Euro trip in Prague, and I went to international school, I went to IS, I'm one of those kids. And one of my friends, like this really fucking like guapo IS jock, right? He was just like, we were there in the room, and there was this janitor girl, and she was really hot. Like this janitor in Prague, she was really freezing smoking, right? And my friend's just like, I'm gonna hit on the cleaning lady. And so he goes up to the cleaning lady, and he's just like, come here often? And obviously he gets like blown out, right? But it's a little thing like that, but he wouldn't hit on the cleaning lady here. Like those things just wouldn't happen here. They're very subtle things that happen all the time over there, and that wouldn't happen here. And that's the point I'm trying to make. And so the third one is, Mom, I'm going to farm. That actually came from me. After school, I wanted to farm, and the first thing my mom said was like, no, like I didn't put you to IS, or I didn't put you to Belgium to farm. And I'm like, Mom, all my friends are farming, like why can't I farm? And she's like, I didn't put you through that education, down with that. And so, like, with these little points, I'm arguing that the money we inherit, with it we inherit a certain form of limitation as well. And so with the money we inherit from our parents, we're expected to act a certain way socially, and I'll get more into that as well. And so the fourth is I worked as a construction worker. Not me, but one of my friends. And I lived in the same house as this guy, he's one of my good friends. But, I mean, how would your parents feel if you guys are just like, okay, so mom, you know, I'm gonna be a construction worker. Do I get feedback or just get a bunch of silent people looking at me like, what's going on?
When your father gonna hit you?
Okay, if one of these guys said like, mom, I'm gonna be a construction worker, like let's say construction workers made like a decent amount of money, like one of you guys just went home and said, mom, I'm gonna be a construction worker. Or dad, how would they react? How would they react? Honestly. They'd flip. Or for the girls, I'm gonna work in a massage parlor or something. Like, your parents would flip, right? I mean, where are you guys from? It's a little bit more okay to be a construction worker over there, right? Oh, that's your
Well, we're unsupported volunteers here, so we are the construction workers.
There they are, exactly. So one of the points I'm trying to make is everything constant. Like, let's say construction workers made okay amount of money. Why is it that there's such a social stigma related to some jobs here that doesn't exist in other places? And that's something I want to look into. And so another thing is you haven't worked at age 18, you're retarded. Like that, I get that a lot. You know, I'm 18 and I'm in Europe, right? And they're like, oh, we're gonna get a job, right? And I'm like, what did you do? I'm like, I never worked. Like, you're fucking retarded, man. You kidding me? Like, I didn't work. I mean, like, and so there are. I'd say there are. Firstly, to say it's really different. You know what I mean? Like the way we're raised is extremely different from how people in the country are raised. And there are good habits and there are bad habits to acquire. I just want to finish with open-ended questions, and I'm not gonna make any value statements about how they are. And this other thing is, I was in Stockholm, and one of my friends quit school and he took a break and he went to Thailand with his girlfriend for 6 months, and I was talking to one of the titas, like, you know, like some Swedish tita, right? And I'm like, so how do you feel about Henrik going to, you know, doing that thing, right? And she goes, well, he's 20, he's an adult, of course he could do that. He could quit school anytime he wants and, you know, just go with his girlfriend to Sweden, I mean to Thailand, right? And honestly, at 20, how many of you guys could do that? I mean, like, let's say you made all the money. Let's say you worked and you had all the money, right? And like, how many of your parents would be like, "Oh yeah, you're an adult. Just do it. You know, go to India with your boyfriend or whatever, girlfriend."
It's not allowed in
Parents here, they probably would rather let you stay.
In the culture. Yeah, and that's what I want to talk about. Like, why isn't it allowed exactly, or why is it even there? Why is it Bawal? Like, why is it Bawal do these really normal things in other countries, right? And this other thing is, I was in Norway, and I have a friend, and he lived in like this really shit house, right? And so he's like, I'll take you to dinner in a nice place. So he takes me to his parents' house, and it was like chandeliers and all that. And I'm like, Nico, why don't you just live here, right? And he's like, oh, my parents make me pay rent when I live here. And I'm like, are you kidding me, man? And I thought he was kidding, right? And he's just like, no, you know, at 18, if you live in the house in Norway, I mean, you gotta pay rent. I'm like, I felt like so crap. I'm like, wow, I'm such a spoiled little kid. I mean, so, but that's it. I mean, I'm not making value judgments, but there are things that they can do and we can't do, and vice versa. That just normal things are Bawal, I guess. What I want to bring up. And so again, they sound weird because of the social. Do all of you agree that there's a social, like a big class system in the Philippines? Like, it's so obvious to outsiders probably, and it's plain for us to see. But I want to talk about the ways it isn't obvious, and these are some of the more subtle ways that they manifest, right? And so what I want to talk about, what I have been talking about, is there a class division in the Philippines? Yes. How does it affect people? Well, it affects people in very subtle ways, obviously. And so that's what I think. I mean, we're all here in the peninsula, and like, we all have money, obviously, to be here. And so I think we don't just inherit our parents' money, but we inherit the social structure that they bring, and we inherit their biases and all that. And the counterpoint is that, like, okay, maybe, you know, like, why wouldn't a parent let you work in a construction, like, why wouldn't a Filipino parent let a kid work in a construction market in Germany? Like, people could say, like, oh, obviously, like, they don't make much money. Of course they make money. I mean, like, 1,000 euros a month is 50,000 pesos a month. That's more, being a construction worker in Germany makes you more than most entry-level jobs over here. So why don't parents send their kids over there? Working in a fish market in Norway makes you 150,000 pesos a month, and you're cutting fish all day. And that's way better than most entry-level jobs here. Why wouldn't a parent send their kid over there? I don't really know. I think it's got something to do with how people are perceived. That's just My vibe, right? And so I'm not saying that everyone's like this. I'm not saying that most Filipinos are like this, but there are a lot of 25 or 30-year-old Filipinos that live with their parents, like for sure, you know what I mean? And it's just the way society is structured. It has an effect on people. And so I think it costs two things, having this social distance around. I think A is it costs connection with people. I mean, like, how well do you guys really know your drivers or maids or their life stories? Like, you guys live with them for years. I don't know. Maybe you guys really know them well. I personally don't, you know? And the second is there's prejudice, and I'd argue that it goes both ways. Like, okay, I was out with this photographer friend of mine, Tamara. Okay. And just kidding, okay, I guess I'm finishing up. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, these things aren't wrong or they aren't right, but they exist. And as much as we don't see them or may not want to see them, they affect our behavior. We don't do certain things and we don't live like certain people because of the way society is structured. I don't think it's right or wrong, but I do think it's definitely something worth into. I mean, like, if you had all the means, why couldn't you just travel somewhere with your girlfriend or boyfriend? Like, why couldn't you do the job you want to do? Like, why do you have to, you're 30, you don't need your parents' approval. Those things really weird me out personally. And that's just something I want to bring to attention. I don't want to criticize it, but I want to bring it to people's attention. Thank you so much for your time.